We are in a drought emergency, and I'm here to talk about that drought emergency and reflect on climate change here tonight. I am in my 16th year on the board of directors, and the majority of time that I have spent on the board has been in drought. And that is unlike most of my colleagues who have served on the board for much longer. This has really been a recent occurrence. A little bit of a quick history of EBMUD. We have a long history that goes back almost 100 years. And we originally were born out of a need for clean and safe, reliable drinking water when, as the East Bay was becoming inhabited and people started to expand and settle here, we did not have the right kind of public utility services provided by the private water utilities that were serving the new communities of Oakland and Berkeley. And so you can see in the image, Lake Temescal, which was an early facility. Lake Anza was also an early East Bay mud facility. But please do not drink from these facilities. They are not safe to drink now. They are recreational facilities. But East Bay Mud was born in the early 20s. Some of these historic pictures do show the construction of our early facilities. And you know, we created a new opportunity for our residents to be able to have clean, accessible, and affordable water here in the East Bay. This is Pardee Dam being constructed in just before the Great Depression, and San Pablo Reservoir, where we have a local storage. Your water today, this is not really what's happening at Pardee Reservoir today. It's actually much drier now. But this is Pardee Reservoir when it is a little bit more full. It's a very pristine landscape. East Bay Mud, those of us that came before us were very judicious about making sure that we could have a protected watershed so that we would have high quality water in our drinking water reservoir. So we own much of the immediate watershed to make sure that the water that's draining through that pristine watershed is clean and safe to drink. We don't own everything for miles and miles away. So we do participate actively in the regulation of the forestry area to make sure that pollution sources like clear cutting are prevented in ways that would poison, that would contaminate East Bay Mud's drinking water source. So our water goes from the McCullummy River watershed over on the east of the screen here, where that McCullummy River is on the borderline between Calaveras and Amador County. Those two counties, that's really the border of those two counties is the McCullummy River. That's the river where East Bay Mud holds the majority of water rights that are allocated on that river. Our water is stored at Pardee Reservoir, and then we also manage a flood control reservoir to make sure that we are protecting the communities of Stockton and Lodi from flooding from too much rain happening at once, while also making sure that even in moderate or dry years, that we're having enough water flowing down the lower McCullummy River, where we have a thriving fishery, and we have a hatchery where we've been restoring steelhead trout and other salmon species to be able to populate the lower McCullummy River all the way through the Delta estuary. Our long-term water supply planning takes this into account. We make sure that this puzzle is built on primarily water conservation. We know that water conservation is really the most honest way to solving our water crisis. And we also want to make sure that we are looking at other solutions. Recycled water is an important part of the portfolio. Water transfers that we purchase from the other water rights holders up the Sacramento River, those partnerships, also with groundwater banking, those are important. And let me just go back to the map and point out some of these locations. So you can see the aqueduct that goes from Pardee Reservoir all the way through the Delta into our service area. I would point out that aqueduct is crossing the Delta, and those Delta levees that have fallen in earthquake hazards are a continuing risk to East Bay MUD's ability to provide reliable water to our service area. We continue to look for long-term solutions to protect our aqueducts because they are vulnerable in the event of a future Delta catastrophe. Our new regional project that's actually been around for well over a decade now, the Freeport Regional Water Facility, you can see just south of Sacramento on the map, and that brings water into our McCollum aqueducts. So we have a contract with the Bureau of Reclamation through the Central Valley Project, and that was obtained by trading EBMUD's historic water rights on the American River. Los Vaqueros is a local facility that is on the edge of the Delta, and I'm not sure if you can really see it visibly on the map, but it's eastern Contra Costa County, and we have continuing discussions with the Contra Costa Water District and virtually every other water district in the Bay Area and some major districts in the state to use that facility for storage. Among all of the alternatives, it seemed to be the least environmentally degrading. At a time when we were looking to make the McCollum River wild and scenic, it was important to be looking for water storage opportunities that would be enduring. While we are concerned about habitat for the kit fox in the vicinity of Los Vaqueros, we are carefully studying these issues and making sure that we're paying attention to mitigating habitat if we continue with future construction there. This is a chart of our water supplies that, as we've gone through the years. So in about 100 years, you can see that the water years are quite variable. So the color coding shows what years have been normal and above, what years have been below normal, dry, or critically dry. So the key to this, the key to being able to have reliable water is to manage storage and to manage conservation and to make sure that we have emergency drought response to be able to get the results that we need to keep that reliability. But the key takeaway here is that 90% of our water supply is coming from the McCollum River, and that river runoff is highly variable. You can see that uncertainty is continuing. So we've measured this against the drought index, and over time, that drought severity is getting worse and worse. So even our wet years, they're not really as wet as they used to be. But an even more marked trend is that each successive drought, and we've had several that are labeled here. The current one that we're in started in 2021, another 3-year drought, or 4-year drought before, another 3-year drought prior. So our modeling is based on being able to get through a 4-year worst case scenario drought planning sequence. It's really modeled based on the 87 through 92 drought. And that's how we approach our water supply planning. This is just looking at the landscape in California. That's actually an image from last year, but we have fairly similar conditions given the supply that we had. At the time, we were looking at, what is the drawdown of our water supplies? And so the idea is that we bring in supplemental supply from the Sacramento River watershed during the drought. This year, it's been in this range of a couple dozen 1,000-acre feet. 1,000-acre foot is a number. So 1 acre foot is the size of a football field, 1 foot deep in water. So that's how we calculate water storage. If you're trying to get a picture of what this is, so that's our carryover supply. Looking about how is this water year going? So it was not as wet as we were hoping, but we did have some periods of very significant rain. So in the East Bay, we had a very wet October, a very wet December, but it's been dry since. You can see based on historic precipitation, the empty boxes are the average. If we don't have that miracle March that we're hoping for, then the chances of being able to get enough water are slimmer and slimmer. This April showers make May flowers. That's really an East Coast thing. Here in California, we are hoping for a miracle March if we have not gotten the right amount of water through yet. This is another graphic about how is our supply doing. We look at the snow depth that's happening right now, and you can see how this our current water year is compared to prior water years. Likewise, the amount of snow content in different parts of the Sierra. So we are prepared for a second year of drought. It's not as bad as it could have been. This is about it is a very dry year right now, but we're having 2 years in a row where it's dry, but our supplies are still able to get us through the coming year. The key is being able to be prepared for another year of potentially dry weather, and then another potential year of dry weather after that. So that's what our planning is based on. We are not to be resilient. We need to make sure that we have enough water in future years, which is why we're making sure to get the word out about the drought emergency now. So what you can see is the way we've projected based on historic averages, historic scatter plots of our rainfall history. We are the black line is charting how much rain have we had at any given point in the year. So we've had a couple storms that have really given us a big boost to get up to where we are, McCollum precipitation just above 30 inches. But we're standing here right now. This chart was prepared in early March, and there hasn't been much rain since. If we take a median year, the line in green, we end up with an average of 48 inches for the year. If it were a 10% exceedance, that means 9 out of 10 years were drier, 1 out of 10 years wetter, then we would be just above the average for a typical water year. But we're tracking really that 90% exceedance. We're tracking not the driest year on record. We crossed that threshold a couple months ago to not be looking at that driest year on record, but it's still pretty dry. So I think where it's looking right now is somewhere just around that area of 35 to 40 inches of rain for the year is what we're planning on right now, what we're expecting. So what does that mean for our storage? That means if we end up still having one of those miracle March years, and we get this very wet March and April that goes above our historic expectations, we would be able to end the drought emergency. So there's a 1 in 10 chance of that occurring. Even if we had a median year, we would be able to end the drought emergency. Our drought guidelines say that we would begin a stage 1 drought when we go below 500,000 acre feet. And so if we have a median average, rainfall year, then we would have 550,000 acre feet in our storage that's planned by the end of September. And then we would be able to declare an end to the drought emergency. But what it's looking like, just looking at the trend of this past year, it's still dry. Our multi-stage drought system has different levels of severity depending on how much water is actually in storage. And so we trigger different things, like whether we have whether we trigger our excessive use penalty, whether we ban the watering of pavement excessively or landscape excessively, whether we have watering landscape on every other day. These are all of the restrictions that we have in place right now. So those are the drought restrictions that go into place in a stage 1 drought. So we currently have those in place, and we do not have the higher level penalties of our excessive use penalty in place right now. But those would trigger when the board declares a stage 2 drought emergency. So at the moment, we're on track to be above 450,000 acre feet. we're likely to stay at the same level of drought emergency that we have been last year. But it does mean that we still need to be vigilant about water conservation. Like I mentioned before, this is actually the formal slides. And I correct myself, we actually have recently changed our stages here. So we are able to, we categorize a stage 1 drought, as starting at around, the level that we're planning to be at. So that's voluntary conservation. And, we do a number of different things that are required when we have a stage 1 drought. But we start to get more mandatory in terms of the amount of conservation and rationing that we're expecting if we were to have a worse off year. So I think what we're looking at now is, how are things going to go in the next year, particularly if we aren't able to keep up the conservation, the excellent conservation that our residents and our customers have been doing. So currently right now we're at stage 1, and assuming that we don't have a drastic drop off in a little bit of rainfall or a major change in customer usage, we're probably going to stay at stage 1. So this is another chart about how are we actually doing. So our customers are doing a pretty good job. We're already a very resilient and efficient community, especially in Berkeley and Oakland and our communities west of the hills. We have a very low per capita, especially indoor water usage. Even outdoors, we have relatively modest lawns, an increasing amount of customers that don't have lawns at all and have drought-resistant landscapes. And so we're already very hardened to be able to have a lot more reductions. But so we respect that each customer is, can be doing what they can. When we set a goal like 10% reduction, that's for our community as a whole. So if people have already been conserving, already using water use efficiently indoors and outdoors, we ask that customers keep doing that and stay vigilant and stay sustainable for our community. But if customers had not taken the opportunity to look at different ideas for outdoor water use or ways to conserve water indoors, this is still a good time to do that, because we're just a little bit shy of our district-wide 10% goal, but we are still a very efficient community compared to others around the state. These are some of the recent activities that we've been doing through our outreach. I love our customer pipeline newsletter. It really gets the word out. We've been showing how we are modeling and planning for climate change. We are doing so much on social media. I'm really excited about our shower song program. So we pushed out on Twitter some 5-minute shower songs that local artists have contributed to, and you can play them and help time your shower based on that. So we do encourage efficiency when you're showering, when you're doing other water use indoors. And we also are providing even more opportunities to get information through the internet. So we've been talking about a lot. So I encourage you to follow EBMUD on Twitter, Facebook, and Nextdoor, where we get the word out about our programs. A little bit more about water conservation. So we are boosting our landscape rebates. We are boosting our office hours for customers to be able to consult and look at this kind of water efficient landscape. We want to help customers be able to learn about the different tools that are available, because this kind of landscape uses such little water compared to a lawn, and looks so colorful and beautiful, and it's native. So those are some of our offerings. We're doing a lot more of these virtually, and we have drop-in sessions where a customer can consult with us for that virtual experience. We are also modernizing our other educational activities. So one of our most successful programs has been our home water report. So customers will get a water report on their bill that actually shows your use in comparison to average households in your neighborhood. And while this person is actually, this bill reflects a really efficient water use, we are finding that this is actually one of the most persuasive ways to get people to conserve. It's modeled after a similar kind of successful outreach effort in the electricity sector. So PG&E and other investor-owned utilities have long used home energy reports to compare you to your neighbors. And if you realize that you are doing not as good as your neighbors, people will actually want to pitch in. People really do share that sense of community when you're compared to your neighbors. So we help show people how people measure up, and that data is really helpful. We are, like I said, boosting our outdoor garden rebate. And so if you want to get up to $2,000, that's available to you. I find that most people in Berkeley are usually not able to get anywhere near that amount because our lawns are just simply smaller. It's paid for on a square footage basis, but that rebate is still available for you. And and all of our landscaping tools and education materials are still free to help you plan your landscape. We are continuing to help people figure out ways to upgrade their fixtures, track your water use, and we no longer do in-home water audits due to COVID-19, but we can mail you a kit. So it's really exciting to be able to get one of those home water kits in the mail, and you can measure how much water is coming out of your shower in terms of how many gallons per minute. You just set a timer, you turn the shower on and see how much water it takes to fill up your bag in how much time. So we send a home, for home use, a bag that you can use to measure this. And that might tell you whether you're really using an efficient shower head, or if your shower head may be wasting water. So that's one thing that we do to help people learn about indoor water use. We also cannot stress enough the importance of repairing leaks. So you can take a look at your water bill if it's something just seems like there's been a big spike. You can look at your meter and see if it's still running even when all of your fixtures are off. And if you find that you have a leak, and those leaks can be very expensive. One water leak that goes on for a 2-month billing cycle can cost you several $100s, maybe even $1,000. What we do is, if you get a plumber and document that you got a plumber to come out and fix that leak, we will credit you 50% back on your next bill, and get you that money back in your pocket for making sure that leak gets plugged up and fixed, and that way we're able to reduce what can be up to 15% of indoor water usage among all of our customers. At the beginning of a drought, that's usually the amount of water that's being lost to leaks. So this is some information about our super rebate program. That $1.50 is per, I believe it's per square foot. And we are introducing a little bit more criteria that reflects environmental quality. So we want to make sure that these new plants are done in the cool season. We did just get through that period, so it'll reopen again. You can apply earlier, but we want to make sure that the plants are actually done in the cool season when they'll be able to grow and be most successful in that process. We want to have compost applied, sheet mulch, and this is to be able to make sure that when you're participating in this program, that the program is successful and that it actually conserves water and doesn't use more water as you make that planting. We're working with our cities to get median strips converted, and we're doing a lot across different sectors, commercial and industrial. So that's just a beautiful picture of another demonstration garden that I wanted to share with you. So we are continuing to present these water supply updates and projections. The EBMUD district, we are also considering water purchases in March and April as required by the Department of reclamation to be able to participate in our contract that allows us these water rights. And we are going to be receiving the final water supply availability and deficiency report, and to take any of those necessary actions to continue our stage 1 drought emergency at our April 26th board meeting. So that's what you can expect us to be doing. We will continue to be vigilant about water supply, about making sure that we are maximizing our investment in water conservation. We're continuing to build out more recycled water facilities. We are continuing to build out more partnerships with the regional partners. I'm really excited about our groundwater partnership with the northern portion of San Joaquin County, because for so many years, San Joaquin County had allowed the groundwater levels to deplete to such a level of degradation that the actual ground, the level had sunk nearly 50 to 80 feet in places. So I think it's really remarkable how we are just getting in on time while we can still preserve some of that groundwater storage. And EBMUD will be able to pump water into the ground during wet years, and we'll be able to access much of that water in dry years in partnership to help restore that groundwater basin. So that's in progress too. There's so much that we're doing. I'm happy to take questions and come back in a future meeting to talk about other things that are of interest to you. I accepted this presentation a little bit on short notice, so I didn't prepare slides on climate change. But as you know, I participate in the let's see, as you know, I participate representing the Sierra Club at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and have a good deal to say about the state of our global response to climate change. It's woefully inadequate. I'm really proud of many of our cities, including Berkeley, that shifted over to 100% renewable energy this month. It's an effort that I worked on as an EBMUD director and a member of the Community Choice Steering Committee for Alameda County. So this month marks the day that our electricity procurement in Berkeley went 100% renewable. I'm very excited about that, but we have so much more to do. So I'd like to start with questions about EBMUD and the drought, and then move into a discussion on climate change.
I have one question. I know that you have the Pardee Reservoir and you're bringing water down from Sacramento River. There's another reservoir up north of that. Have you already started banking the water that you would normally get on a drought year for that?
We have a complex system that involves a lot of different goals. So first and foremost, we need to be stewards of our natural resources. So we are always making sure to operate a fully functional cold water pool that keeps temperatures in our fishery just below Comanche Reservoir at just the right temperature to be able to sustain fish. So if the salmon and the trout don't have that cold water pool, they won't receive the right signals to be able to lay eggs. They won't receive the right signals to be able to come back and spawn there when they're swimming back after being out at sea for a year. So that temperature is very critical. And remarkably, maintaining the right water levels in Pardee and releasing them in the right spurts make sure that cold water flows down Comanche Reservoir. So we are very careful to make sure that our releases from Pardee into Comanche are always paying attention to how does that affect the cold water pool, so that our hatchery is able to succeed and that our fishery is successful. So that's one consideration. We do have a Lower Bear Reservoir upstream of Pardee Reservoir. That facility is owned and operated by Pacific Gas and Electric Company, and they optimize that facility entirely for electricity. So their license from FERC is intended to make sure that they are able to supply their own facilities and their own grid needs with electricity. And we have to work with them, and we are for the most part able to work with their constraints and receive water. They have obligations to have adequate flows down that portion of the Upper McCollum River as well. But they so we are obviously using as judicious an amount as we can in terms of moving water from Pardee to our local reservoirs. We're always cognizant that at any moment we could have a very significant earthquake. A Hayward 7 would be devastating for our local corridor. But imagine a Hayward, imagine a magnitude 7 earthquake on the Delta that could devastate the levees that protect our aqueduct. So if our aqueduct is inundated with the Delta, which is increasingly salt water, and has a corrosive effect on the pipe. So we may have to take, in that kind of event, that aqueduct out of commission while it's repaired and while the levees are repaired. So to prepare for that event, we always want to make sure that we have 6 months of emergency storage locally. So having that local storage makes us more resilient to earthquakes and disaster preparedness. So these are all of the considerations that we're taking into account. The lowering the level of water at Pardee is not, that is where we store our drinking water, except for the local storage. So that's one major consideration. We don't drink out of Comanche Reservoir. That's for flood control and allowing flows down the lower McCollum River. So there's a lot of complexities to our systems. So I'm just illustrating a couple of them. Generally, the water is staying in Pardee until it's ready to move to us.
Okay, I had said we should write it in chat, but if people want to raise their hand and unmute themselves, we could have verbal questions as well. I have one question for you. Jeanette and I received an email from this woman we do not know named Chris Homey. Unfortunately, she's not here today. It's a rather long tome, which I will send to you.